welcome to the 12th annual Latke Hamentaschen debate. I'm Rabbi Michelle Fisher. I'm the executive director of MIT Hillel, and I will be the moderator of this evening's debate. We have to my right, which is what, stage left? Who's the theater people? I don't know. To this side, we have the Latke represented by Tali. Woo! And to my left, we have Noah representing the hamentash. Yeah. We're going to have fun tonight. You're going to laugh. You're going to cry. You're going to have tears coming down your face and your stomach's rolling, and you're going to be in the aisles and rolling on the floor in laughter. And don't hurt yourself on these stairs. They're made of rock. I don't want any, trips to the emergency room this evening. This is called the Great Debate. And there is no more important topic since the great historic debates between the American statesmen Stephen Douglas and Henry Clay, or even the great debate between the astronomers Harlow Shapley and Heber Curtis. This is the Great Debate. Yeah! Because tonight, we're going to determine the future of indigestion. But before we get started, we should ask ourselves, why do we do this? What's the strategic and mission-driven importance and purpose of tonight? What makes this evening so important and so Jewish? Why does Hillel do a Latke Hamentaschen debate? Well, debate is Jewish, humor is Jewish, and they tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. Over the next few moments, I will debate or prove all of these points. And more than anything else, this evening is about having fun, building community, using two classic Jewish forms. Definition of debate. So if you look in Wikipedia, debate is a contention, an argument, dispute, or controversy. A discussion, especially the discussion of questions of public, that are done in public in any assembly. Debating is commonly carried out in many assemblies of various types to discuss matters and to make resolutions about actions to be taken, often by a vote. And the purpose of the debate tonight is to discuss the long-standing controversy about the better food. The latke? Fine potato gratings and deeply saturated oil. Or the hamentaschen. Cakey dough and fruity sweetness. The resolution this evening, we'll be voting on what we should be eating after the debate, which of course is the purpose of all Jewish debate. A bit of history. The earliest form of the Latke Hamentaschen debate began with Cain and Abel, soon after creation, where brotherhood friendship quickly became murderous. And note, it all had to do with food. The Bible records that it was about grain offerings versus a barbecue, but we know it was really wheat and fruit versus potatoes and oil. We are going to try and keep this a little bit more civil than that picture tonight, and to prove that we've evolved since then. And in fact, by the time of the rabbinic period, long after the Bible, the rabbis Hillel and Shammai, first century before the Common Era sages, they were known for their civil disputations. And I found a surprisingly early debate as I researched for tonight. Beit Hillel taught, one should increase one's enjoyment of latkes and hamentaschen between Hanukkah and Purim in order to ensure an extra layer of fat for the cold Boston winters. Beit Shammai taught one should decrease one's latke and hamentaschen intake as winter progresses into spring in order to be able to fit into one's summer bathing suit. We've shown debate is Jewish. We all know that humor is also Jewish. Jon Stewart, Mayim Bialik, Adam Sandler, Joan Rivers. Humor is not just Hollywood or New York City. It's in our veins, our genes, or maybe it was a psychological defense mechanism adopted through the last 5,774 years. Maybe not all comedians are Jewish, but you could argue that some of the best truly are. And they've been weighing in and endorsing food, in fact, these very food, for ages. As Jerry Seinfeld can tell you, look to the cookie, Elaine. Look to the cookie. Or as Sarah Silverman urges you, I'm urging all of you, to schlep over to Florida and convince your grandparents to vote for the latke. This debate is always held between the holidays of Hanukkah, the holiday of our latkes, and Purim, the time of our hamentaschen. Purim is the holiday that celebrates the Jews' defeat of the evil Haman. And is compared by our Jewish tradition to the solemnest day on our Jewish calendar, Yom Kippurim, or as our sages suggest, Yom Kippur. A day like Purim. Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. Clearly this is meant to give precedence and holiness to this evening's triangular delight. However, not to be outshined nor out-holied, Hanukkah celebrates the defeat of the Assyrian Greeks and the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem, the holiest site in Judaism, given certain deep weight to the latke. We survived, we eat. Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? That and having us feel good about ourselves, about our community, and to take a serious break from our work for some serious laughter. We have a new format this evening, including graduate students in this evening's debate. It's a proven fact that good wines and good cheeses get better with age. Does lab humor do the same? That too is on the line, and our grad students have a lot to prove. The rest of the format will be like previous years. 7 minutes are given to each debater. We'll alternate teams, and our first team will be decided by coin toss. Heads or tails?
Heads. Heads.
Okay. It's a good thing that you guys are on the same team and said the same thing. So.
We'll take tails.
Good, there we go. And hamentaschen. I said it's all fair. Then there'll be a few minutes for rebuttal to work on that rebuttal, which will be 90 seconds per team. Then we vote. Then we eat. Then we eat some more. As your Yiddish-speaking Bubby would say, Essen, mein Kind. Eat, my child. We'll begin with the hamentaschen. Our first debater will be Elena Glassman. Finishing up her first decade at MIT, Elena Glassman earned her bachelor's in course 6 in 2008, a master's in engineering in 2010, and she's now working on a PhD in ECS. Bets are being collected as to whether she will become a lifer and never leave. Elena has experience in many areas of science and engineering, not limited to robotics, science education, biomedical processes, and user interfaces. Her most recent 2013 paper was entitled Towards Facilitating Assistance to Students Attempting Engineering Design Problems Related to Hamentaschen. All but the last 3 words of that is correct. Her current extracurricular interests focus on interreligious and cross-people and cross-cultural dialogue and gaining a profound understanding of the other. For the evening, however, she has decided to instead channel her equally intense skills in wrestling and martial arts in order to defend the honor of the Hamentaschen. Let's hear it for Elena.
Due to technical difficulties, I won't be using presentation mode, but that is kind of in general, in keeping with the general form of tonight's talk, which was kicked off very nicely by Marissa on Friday night. She asked me for a really big favor, and she kept on emphasizing how really big it was. I was pretty convinced that it had something to do with the fact that I own a car. But instead of asking me for a ride, she asked me to weigh in on this debate that's been going on college campuses since 1946, actually. And such intellectual heavyweights, such as the Harvard professors Steven Pinker and Alan Dershowitz have weighed in. That was 2007, epic. And also this past year, our very own professor of ECS, Scott Aronson, who gave a tour de force, you really should read it actually, The Superiority of the Latke, the Unexpected Convergence of Quantum Mechanics and Common Sense. So, as Rabbi Fisher said, I'm no quantum physicist, I'm a computer scientist. And actually my research now is a little bit about collective action and how that's expressed on Twitter and social media. So hold on to your seats. That's going to come up very soon. But just a little bit of a confession, actually. So before I even got to hear from Marissa which team she would like me to argue for, I started to think about these foods and my own relationship with them, because like right off the bat, it's really easy to remember what Hanukkah is like, and how this is my friend Erica. Her mom made latkes that, well, her mom was not as preoccupied with health food as my mom was. So they were memorable. And also Hanukkah is a great holiday because you get presents, and so if you have children and if you celebrate, you can express your inner nerd by giving your children gifts like the Amateur Radio Relay League's Wire Antenna Classics. My dad really wants credit for that. So also, I guess, so I initially thought, oh no, I have to argue for a cookie that I usually only eat when absolutely necessary in order to be polite. Woo! I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. But it's okay, it's okay. I've rethought the hamentaschen, and I'm a convert. And so I hope you will be too. All right, so let's just go back a little bit, sorry about the formatting, to where does the hamentaschen come from? It's actually, there's a lot of theories. Hamentaschen looks like Hamentashen's ears, or it's his pockets, or something like that. But if you look at the Yiddish and German words, Mon means poppy, and Taschen means pocket. And so both in German and Yiddish, Hamentaschen referred to pockets of dough filled with poppy seed. And I mean, how can you go wrong? You're also not limited to poppy seeds. This is where creativity is really, your own creativity is the limit of where you can take hamentaschen. Hamentaschen I wish I have. Caramelized onion and goat cheese savory pizza hamentaschen. Go home, make it tonight. I'm sorry that that's not going to be on the menu right now, I know. It's probably something a little more classic like apricot. Okay, so so I decided as a computer scientist I should use my coding skills to consult the collective, otherwise known as the Twitterverse. But crowdsourcing is a great answer too, we should do that. This is an IPython notebook, a little Python script. You can actually find how-to videos on the web if you're interested. That's how I did it. The link here is to Twitter. I can insert a keyword in the middle of it. I search the Twitter, and it sends me back a set of results. It kind of looks like this, at least the way I formatted it. And you can actually see, well, it's these are latke-related tweets that I grabbed. I did the same thing for hamentaschen. The second tweet here says, curry sweet potato latke with a cucumber mint tahini topping. Happy lunch. Right? So these are people who are really excited about their respective choices in Jewish culinary tradition. And so then I wanted to know, are the latke eaters empirically, on average, happier? Are they expressing more exuberance for life than the hamentaschen eaters? Because I don't think that would be the case. Let's consult a little bit of sentiment analysis. So you can see here that, unfortunately for me, the latke eaters are just slightly more positive than the hamentaschen. But, hold it, the debate's not over yet. I also want you to notice that both data sets include in their first few tweets an interesting little phenomenon where you see on the left side, I tried to highlight it here, it says, hashtag not Jewish, but I love the latkes. And on the right side, someone says, not Jewish, these little fruit-filled cookie treats make great appetizers on any holiday. So clearly these things have broad appeal. All right, so I'm kind of in a, I'm going to chalk this difference up to statistical variation. Okay? And we're going to try to do a tiebreaker. So I decided to consult Google Trends. Google Trends allows you to look at search queries over time from 2004 till today. And by searching for latkes and hamentaschen, you actually see a really, what you might expect. The latkes peak at the end of the year, and in the towards in the spring, you've got the Purim interest in hamentaschen. Let me point out, though, that the peaks of the hamentaschen are taller than the peaks of the poor latke. It's okay that on average they are the same. All right, well, if you're not already convinced, okay, and the collective wisdom of the crowd has not won you over, okay, maybe you have this grudge, this memory of terrible store-bought crumbly brick-like hamentaschen that sometimes you are stuck with, okay? Sorry, this is not one of those. This is a very nice one. Then I appeal for you to remember a common Yiddish folklore kind of sentiment, okay? And just remind yourselves that you should vote for Team Hamentaschen because, well, they could be worse. Oh, oops.
Let's hear it for Team Hamentaschen. Got it. As Ethan Sokol, our next debater from the Team Latke, is setting up, I will give an intro. Ethan is a Course 7 graduate student hailing from Long Island, a well-known Jewish shtetl. He works in the Gupta lab at the Whitehead, studying cell biology and cancer. In his spare time, he sings about hummus with the MIT a cappella group Tekiah. He's also a founding member of the Challah for Hunger Club on campus. So I pray that his food loyalties aren't too finely split and that he'll be able to fully defend the latke's superiority this evening. Let's hear it for Ethan.
Awesome. So I'm Ethan. I'm from the Gupta lab at the Whitehead Institute of Biomedical and Potato Research. And today I'm going to tell you about latkes, a very important potato product. So I'm going to start with a few broader impacts. So latkes, as you know, are made out of potatoes, and potatoes are extremely important. So potatoes are important economically, socially, and culturally. Economically, and this is not a made-up number, 300 billion kilograms of potatoes are produced in the world every single year. To contextualize that number a bit, if you had an Olympic-sized pool, it would take 168,000 of them to store all the potatoes produced. Or, let's say you wanted to store all your potatoes in Cambridge. If you were to take Cambridge and pile potatoes, they would be 70 feet high. So that next time you're thinking, who cares about potatoes? Think about standing on top of the green building, with a sea of potatoes all around you. In addition, this is a very important product because it takes less water to produce per pound than other traditional crops. So with the droughts that we've been having in California especially, it's great to have a product that takes only 499 pounds of water versus soybeans, which take 646 pounds of water per pound. Also, they're very important in the restaurant industry. So, some restaurants will boil them, they'll mash them, they'll stick them in a stew. Imagine your restaurant experience without home fries, It just wouldn't be the same. Also, potatoes are important socially. They're a source of pride. When you go home and you're like, I just made a baked potato. What's that potato? It's an Idaho potato. You say that with a lot of pride right here. Also, it's a metaphor for substance. Latkes are substance. The meat and potatoes of the argument, That's what we are, the potatoes of the argument. Potatoes are also important culturally. So there are millions of Christians in this country, and every year they put up Christmas lights. How else would you power your Christmas lights without potatoes? It just wouldn't happen. It would be a very sad December. Also, it's important in video games too. Who knew? So you got the omnipotent GLaDOS in Portal 2 becomes a potato. It's an important plot feature right there. Also, you might not know this, but a lot of pop songs are about potatoes. So I don't know if you know Rebecca Black, but she was actually singing about frying potatoes. It's Friday. Friday. Who knew? Now you know. I hope I taught you something today. So, given this importance of potatoes, we decided to take a closer look at latkes. As I've mentioned, they're a very important potato product. And we decided to look at the effects of making latkes versus a control food, hamentaschen. And so, latkes are very easy to make. You don't even need words to describe how to make them. All you have to do is take some potatoes, peel them, take some onions, chop them, add some eggs, add some salt, mix them together, fry them. And you got a delicious food. However, a quick literature search shows that hamentaschen are really hard to make. You go to Google, you got pages upon pages upon pages of text, and then, to top that off, you have to go to the supplemental on how to fold it. It's a 7-page supplemental. They're really hard to make. So this, coupled with the fact that cooking is a major cause of holiday stress, well, in addition to Aunt Rugula and more organizing the menorahs, it's really hard to know where to put them. You could put them on the shelf, you could put them on the table. We figured that since latkes are easy to make, they would reduce holiday stress and would increase people's happiness. So to test this, we got 100 participants and randomly assigned them to 2 groups, a latke making group and a hamentaschen making group. And then we performed a battery of tests. And what we found is that participants who made latkes had a lower level of stress, significantly lower. And what was interesting in this study is that there was actually a trend towards latke making being less stressful than petting a cat. It didn't quite reach statistical significance, but who knew? And then we also subjecting them to the smiley test to measure happiness. And so if you take a face and you measure the corner of the mouth relative to a parallel line and take the angle of that corner of the mouth, you can determine happiness. So a person who's neutrally happy will have an angle of 0. A person who's very happy, maybe an angle around positive 30. Very unhappy, maybe negative 30. And what we found is that latke makers had a 5-fold higher mouth angle. It was 20 degrees versus 4 degrees. So we thought this meant they were much more happy. And then we also noted a couple other things that we weren't originally testing for. And one of those is that participants were extremely stressed out because of how hamentashen is spelled. They didn't know. We were like, what food are you making? Write it down for us. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I have no idea how to spell it. Is it S-C-H-A-N, S-H-E-N? Who knows? And the latke makers, everything went so fast that they just had a better quality of life. They were done. They're eating their latkes, while the hamentaschen people were trying to fold it, make it into a hat. Who knows? So in conclusion, latke making results in greater happiness, decreased stress relative to hamentaschen making. Therefore, we support latke making over hamentaschen making, and especially latke eating. So I'd like to acknowledge my thesis committee, Dr. Fry and Dr. Russett, and especially the Center for Deliciousness Control. They supported most of this research. And of course, none of this research would have been possible without my lab, so I'd like to thank them as well.
Okay. Our next debater is Isaac Oderberg, a graduate student in the Radin Lab in the Whitehead Institute. Like everyone there, he does something in biology. In Isaac's case, this means spending his time with worms and studying their ability to regenerate. In order to personally regenerate MIT undergraduates' interest in course 7, Isaac created a tutoring program with a very easy to remember acronym, Great Music 7, which stands for the less easy to remember phrase, Graduate Researchers Educating and Teaching MIT Undergraduate Students in Course 7. No joke. Isaac is the current president of Grad Hillel, and if you forget his name...
It is on my hat. I'm just not wearing it.
It's normally on his hat. Let's hear it for Isaac.
Let's get my presentation set up.
We'll get there.
Thank you, Rabbi Fisher, for that kind introduction. As she said, my name is Isaac Oderberg. I'm a grad student in biology and also in the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences, which, as any undergraduate in the audience could tell you, is course 20. My talk today is about the empirical determination of the relative utilities of latkes and hamentaschen. This is an overview of my talk. First, I will give you some background that you need to know in order to appreciate the results. I'll talk about the diversity of flavors represented in both latkes and hamentaschen. I'll spend one slide talking about the varying nutritional benefits of latkes and hamentaschen. And then I'm going to discuss an experiment that we ran to try and determine which food has a higher utility. So, latkes and hamentaschen are both very important symbolic cultural foods. Latkes, traditionally eaten during the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, are potato pancakes baked in oil, and hamentaschen, traditionally eaten during the Jewish holiday of Purim, are pastries that are folded into a triangular shape and can have a number of different fillings. So, despite the fact that there has been considerable academic debate about the relative merits of latkes and hamentaschen, which item represents the superior foodstuff is an unanswered question in our field. With regard to the diversity of flavors present in latkes and hamentaschen, a quick literature search will reveal that there are two primary condiments that are associated with latkes: applesauce and sour cream. And despite which camp you're in, the applesauce or the sour cream camp, I think arguably those are condiments that are not fundamentally a part of the latke itself, giving the latke a singular flavor. However, hamentaschen have an incredible diversity of different flavors that are possible. What I have shown here is a phylogenetic tree showing you the evolutionary relationships between the fruits that give rise to different hamentaschen flavors. I have some of the more common ones here, such as apricot, raspberry, or poppy seed. Although, as was alluded in Elena's talk, the modular architecture of hamentaschen allows for a virtually unlimited number of flavors. So we're comparing latkes, which have essentially one flavor, to hamentaschen, which have almost an infinite number of flavors. Now, being a nutrition scientist, I have to talk a little bit about the nutrition value of the two foodstuffs in question. However, I would like to take a moment to point out that all of the previous studies comparing the nutrition facts between latkes and hamentaschen failed to normalize between the two samples. So looking at one hamentaschen and one giant latke, yes, the latke would have more energy. But when you normalize for the amount of mass, as I have done here in this chart, you find, and you take a quick look at the calories, you find out that per unit mass, hamentaschen actually have a higher energy density, making them more efficient as foodstuffs. But these observations are nice, but what we really want to know is, in an experiment, which item would come out ahead. So I'll talk a little bit about the experimental setup that we decided to use to answer this question. We went around campus on Thursday night and located students' p-setting for a problem set that was due the next day. So naturally, we knew that they would be working on it for an extended period of time without interruptions. So we went around to different groups, and there were at least 3 or more replicates within each experimental sample. And they were given a box on their table, an unopened box. And when they opened it, they either found that there were latkes inside the box, there were hamentaschen packed inside the box, or, as a negative control, they received an empty box. It's very important to do your controls. The metric that we decided to use to understand how helpful or detrimental these foodstuffs were, rather than measuring kind of the progress along the p-set, we found it easier to measure procrastination time. And so Over the course of the evening, as we observed, students spent an average of 120 minutes procrastinating while working on their P-sets. For the experimental sample, where they were given a box filled with latkes, we found that there was a slight decrease in the amount of procrastination, but it was not statistically significant. However, in the experimental sample where they were given a box of latkes, we found at least a twofold decrease in the amount of procrastination time over the course of the evening. And what I'm showing you here is a very small p-value that came from a two-tailed t-test. So I hope that I've shown you over the course of this talk that hamentaschen represent a much more diverse set of flavors than latkes do. Hamentaschen have a higher energy density, making them more efficient as foods, and that in a direct comparison between latkes and hamentaschen had the ability to reduce procrastination times by almost twofold. I would like to thank my collaborators, MIT Hillel and Dr. Christine Fong, the director of the Jewish Pastry Institute, as well as my funding sources, the Center for Jewish Cuisine and the American Association for the Advancement of Food. Thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Okay.
I sure hope so.
That you? 1 second, and I have intro. Okay. Our next debater is Professor John Carroll, the Morris A. Edelman Professor of Management, Professor of Organizational Studies and Engineering Systems, and the co-director of the Lean Advancement Initiative at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Professor Carroll studies individual and group decision-making and has examined teamwork and human performance improvement. According to the Sloan website, and I can't make this up, his areas of general expertise include, but are not limited to, aerospace, air safety, change management, chemical, engineering management, experimental design, healthcare, healthcare's operations management, information technology, social aspects, leadership, managing change, nuclear power, organizational studies, organizational behavior, organizational change, organizational learning, organizational psychology, and teams. In his spare time, he's on the Latke team.
Latkes. You've been around long enough, you get to be expert on pretty much everything. Let's see if this will, except putting on a microphone. Maybe I'll hold it. Is that gonna, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi, for that introduction, which I think you forgot at least one thing that I must be expert on somewhere. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this hysterical debate. No, historical debate, this historic debate, yes. And I consider this to be far more than an issue of, taste of foods or particular nutritions. Indeed, I would argue that the Latke approach to life and the Hamentaschen approach to life are ways of thinking, they're ways of being, they're ways of organizing and ways of living, and that choosing Latke or choosing Hamentaschen is far more than a particular issue of taste. In fact, my argument is that Latke thinking can heal the world. Tikkun olam. All right? Now, in fact, Ethan quite spontaneously brought up the question of spelling. And as you can see, Hamentaschen it's no one here would even bother spelling it because your spell checker would spell it for you, right? Except it would give you lamentation. So it is part of the human experience, as every spell checker knows, that really a Hamentaschen is a very sad thing. Now, my argument, however, is a broader one. It is based on how we as humans organize ourselves into groups. And fundamentally, there are two ways to organize. There's the triangle and the circle. And this is the basis of all human society and human organizing. And the triangle, as all of you, I'm sure, have experienced, represents power and hierarchy. So those at the top of the triangle, you know, they are telling everybody below what to do. Those at the bottom are trying their best to resist and, you know, find corners where they can hide and do their thing. That we would call theory H. The command and control, the triangle, theory H. And the other way of organizing in a circle, is about collaboration and community. It is about coordinating and bringing out the best in people and growing together. We're going to call that theory L. Now, a few more specifics on this. Theory H, you can call it theory hierarchy, you can call it theory hamentaschen, pretty much the same thing. The basis of it is it's good to be king. Maybe these days it's even better to be CEO. And as this chart shows you, for example, in a typical football team, it's the right of who can scream at whom. You can scream down the hierarchy, but you better not scream up the hierarchy. Okay, this is the root of the mass production, the large, and I will say at this point, failing corporations of the 20th century. And of course, the style of organizing and thinking goes back all the way to the pyramids and probably long before that. In contrast, theory L. Theory L, which also has a long and storied past, but, you know, I think I'm seeing it as the wave of the future as well. Theory L is the theory of liberty and liberation. And oddly enough, right here on the shirt it says that. But it's the theory of liberty, it's the theory of Latke. And it is the theory of organizing people who respect each other's contributions, who are peers and equals, and who will work together to bring out the best in all. And that, you know, goes back to the innovation of the Knights of the Round Table. How do we get away from the physical layout of the hierarchy? It is the essence of teamwork. And I think it is the essence of how organizations are now innovating and developing, and it's the organization of the future. So, for example, project teams, more and more is the way that businesses are organized. We don't organize by someone up there telling everybody what to do. We organize in teams. For R&D, for new products, for labs at MIT, for our centers, and so forth. Diverse teams, distributed teams, you know, they make the best use of everybody's knowledge and skills. Team members have to trust each other, work with each other. They bring their expertise and they bring their networks of who they know and who they connect with into the team. Notable examples, Linux, Wikipedia, a lot of your favorites out there were developed not by theory H, but by theory L, by a group of people who just decided they wanted to do this, and who self-organized, maybe with, you know, a little bit of an inner circle and then a big outer circle of thousands of people contributing to this, hundreds of thousands. Okay? So, in conclusion, theory H, the theory of the past, the theory that, you know, ruled the world in its time, but its time has passed. And that theory must give way to theory L, which the theory that I would propose to you is not simply a food choice, but is a choice to choose latke, choose liberty, choose life.
Thank you, John. Hamentaschen team seems to be debating over here. Our final debater for the Hamentaschen team is Max Tegmark. Professor Max Tegmark has been a physics professor at MIT since 2004. His research is focused on precision cosmology, that is, determining the exact measurement of how hamentaschen influence the pull of planets and constrain the movements of moons and satellites. His book, Our Mathematical Universe, ranks 375 on the Amazon bestseller book list, which is pretty high up, I must say. It has a shipping weight of 1.8 pounds, and customer reviews average 4 out of 5 stars. The book is Max's quest. The book is Max's quest to explore the ultimate nature of reality, from the microcosm to our universe and beyond. Clearly, the Latke-Hamentaschen debate is of even greater significance, however, given that he's spent the past 5 weeks since January 7th crisscrossing the US and England on a book tour, only breaking for tonight's program. You can check it on the website. The travel is really true. Let's hear it for Max.
Thank you so much. Great over here. Can you fire me up in presentation mode? It's a great honor and pleasure to be here to defend the one true pastry. Don't presentation quickly before the beans get spilled. Great. So, as a physicist, I want to argue for the superiority of the Hamentaschen from a physics perspective. So, as you heard here, I've been spending the last 3 years writing this book called Our Mathematical Hamentash. And I want to share with you some of the key arguments I make in this book and their enormous relevance for tonight's great debate. So, I talk in this book about how our universe is deeply mathematical at heart, and how you need to look at these mathematical structures. So let us look at the hamentash here as a mathematical structure. And this is an argument I'm very much looking forward to hearing the rebuttals on, particularly from Professor Larry Guth in the math department, who I think will be forced to concede that the hamentash as a mathematical structure is really beautiful. It has this remarkable set of symmetries illustrated here. You have both 3 different planes in which you can reflect it perfectly, and you also have these rotation symmetries forming the 6-fold rotation group. And in contrast, the latke, it's really merely a sad and pathetic amorphous blob. Now, to make this more quantitative, this debate, we need to bring some more mathematical rigor into this and associate each one of these 2 pastries with a number. So for the hamentash, it's quite obvious that the number should be 3, because as we just saw, it has this beautiful 3-fold symmetry. So henceforth, instead of saying 3, I'm just going to be referring to the hamentash number. All right? What should we enumerate the latke as? Well, this is really sad that it's a lack of symmetry, but if we have to pick a number, this amorphous blob is most shaped like the 0. So 0 will be the latke number. Okay? Now, let's turn to some real physics and turn not to human statistics and such things, but to turn to Mother Nature, who is, after all, the ultimate arbiter of truth in physics, and ask Mother Nature which of these 2 numbers is more fundamental, is more important, is more built into the very fabric of our physical reality. For example, space. One of the very fabric of a stage upon which all of these events are unfolding. How many dimensions does space have? 3. The hamentaschen number. Yes, exactly. Woo! I didn't make this up. We made the experiment. How many pencils can we hold perpendicularly to each other? It's the hamentaschen number. But let us not stop there. Let us not just contemplate the structure of space. Let us also contemplate what is in space. For all of us in this room, and everything we've ever found in our universe is ultimately made of these elementary particles. Right? The vast majority of the mass in this room is in protons and neutrons. How many, so these protons, we've studied them extensively, right? What is a proton? It's made of quarks. How many quarks are there in the proton, the most important particle of our universe? Almost all of our universe was protons 13.8 billion years ago when it emerged from Alan Guth's inflation theory after a Big Bang. How many quarks are there in the proton? The hamentaschen number. You need to jump up and down here to illustrate. Yes, exactly. 2 up quarks and a down quark. Now, about 50% of the mass in this room is in protons, but then the other 50% is mostly neutrons. So let's not ignore them, even though there weren't a lot of them well, actually a little bit less than 50%, but a lot of, between the two of them, we have almost all the mass covered in this room. How many quarks are there in a neutron? The hamentaschen number, again. So clearly, you know, Mother Nature, we've asked 3 deep and profound questions of Mother Nature, and it seems to me there's a pattern here to the answers. Mother Nature seems to be telling us something. But let us not rest on our laurels here for the Hamentaschen team. Let's drill even deeper. After all, Alan Guth and I have another colleague here in the physics department who got the Nobel Prize for studying these quarks, and he studied them in much greater detail, their structure and their properties, and we now know, thanks to experiments done in particle colliders where we smash these particles together very close to the speed of light, okay, more about their structures. We've discovered that there aren't just up and down quarks, there are more quarks. They form, in fact, several different generations of quarks. Okay? This is the very cornerstone of the standard model of particle physics. So we must ask now, how many generations of quarks are there? The hamentaschen number. Yes. The first generation went up and down, the second generation, and the third generation. We have, yet again, nature has spoken to us. We have asked, nature has answered. Now, before we close, I also, of course, enjoy very much looking out into the heavens with telescopes. So I have spent a lot of time working on this project, the SDSS, the most ambitious sky survey to date. We have this amazing telescope down in Apache Point, New Mexico, where we had, when we inaugurated the survey, it had the most ambitious camera ever built for astronomical purposes. It's been surveying the sky for many, many years, digitizing and finding hundreds and hundreds of millions of objects, okay? And you see here, if you look carefully around the middle of this plot, the Big Dipper. Let's zoom in and see what we found with this lone delectable sky survey. Let's keep zooming in here. You see we have an enormous amount of detail. You can go home and check this later on. If you go to Google Maps and switch to Google Sky, so you look upwards, we've shared all this data so you can go independently confirm after this debate. And let's zoom in on this galaxy here and see if we see anything interesting. Nature has spoken. I rest my case.
Are you using this? No. Our final debater representing the Latke team is Professor Larry Guth, a professor of mathematics. He, in fact, like me, is a boomerang. He earned his PhD from MIT in 2005 and couldn't stay away, returning to MIT in 2012 as a faculty member. His research interests are in metric geometry, combinatorial geometry, and harmonic analysis. According to his MIT website, metric geometry refers to estimates about lengths, areas, volumes, distances, etc. I like the etc. that was in there. This clearly was meant to include the size of latkes, their weight, and how far they can be thrown. Among his publications is one directly related to tonight's gastronomic studies. It's entitled The Waste Inequality in Gromov's Work. And obviously, Gromov was a Jewish bubby in disguise and was overfeeding the family latkes. Let's hear it for Larry.
Bit of a low tech. I'm a little bit of a low tech person.
You just hold this.
I used to be into hamentaschen when I was a kid. I liked them growing up, and even my father once debated in the Latke hamentaschen debate on the hamentaschen side. But in the last few years, I've learned about latkes. There's been a change, and this last year we even had latkes on Purim, and we're all much happier. So I have to tell you a little bit about our family. So traditionally on all of the holidays we have tremendous arguments. So on Purim, Aunt Sarah and Aunt Linda will be arguing about politics, and my cousin Minnie will be pulling her little sister's hair and she'll be crying, and my Aunt Matilda is in the kitchen and she's making the hamentaschen and yelling. And Aunt Matilda is fanatical that all of the hamentaschen should be exactly the same size. And then she has to come out of the kitchen. Minnie's little sister is crying, and so Aunt Matilda has to come out of the kitchen to yell at them, and Uncle Jeffrey has to go in to put the little sprinkles of sugar onto the hamentaschen. So Aunt Matilda has made these fanatically exactly the same size hamentaschen. And Uncle Jeffrey goes into the kitchen and he wants to stay in there as long as possible, and his job is to put on the little sugar at the end. So he does it like this. Okay, and so finally dinner comes, and we manage to eat, and at the end the hamentaschen come out for dessert, and Aunt Matilda fanatically has to check whether all of the hamentaschen have the same exact number of sugar on them, and they don't, and she yells at Uncle Jeffrey, and Uncle Jeffrey says, well, he's not perfect, and she says, and she's upset at him, and everyone is fighting, and she says, well, you do it much better with the latkes on Hanukkah. Because every Hanukkah, you know, Aunt Sarah and Aunt Linda are arguing about politics, and Cousin Minnie is pulling her little sister's hair, and she's crying, and Aunt Linda is in the kitchen making the latkes, fanatically making them all exactly the same size. And the sister starts crying, and then Matilda has to go out to yell at them, and Uncle Jeffrey gets to go in and put the salt on the latkes. So he goes in, and all of the latkes are there, and they're exactly the same size, and he wants to stay in the kitchen as long as possible, and he puts on the salt like this. And then we all come out for dinner, and the latkes come out, and Aunt Matilda fanatically has to check that everybody is getting the same amount of salt. And it's okay. And we all chill out. And everyone in the family used to discuss and argue. Aunt Matilda would say that Jeffrey was just doing a bad job on Purim, and he was doing a good job on Hanukkah, right? But Uncle Jeffrey would say he was doing exactly the same thing all of the time. And so the family decided to do a study, and we received a grant from the National Science Foundation. So we did a study. Here's what we did. So we did a very large sample. We would pick a random point here and put down the grid of the sugar, and this would be 1 unit long. And to figure things out, we would take a very large hamentaschen. So this was 10 to the 100. And we did this on hamentaschen 1, and we did this on hamentaschen 2. And we were interested in how these numbers compared. So we took the number of grains on hamentaschen 1 minus the number of grains on hamentaschen 2. And we took the size of that, and we averaged over many trials. And this turns out to be about 10 to the 99. And then we did the same thing with the latkes. So this is about 1, and this is 10 to the 100. And we have latke 1 and latke 2, and we compared the number of grains on latke 1 minus the number of grains on latke 2. And we took the size of that, and we averaged over many trials. And this comes out to about 10 to the 51. So latkes are much better than hamentaschen. And we were very intrigued by this, so we went to the library. We tried to figure out why this was true, and we discovered that this is a very old problem. This is called the Gauss-Latke problem. It was posed by Gauss in the Disquisitiones Latke Medica in the early 1800s. This is all true. We had very interesting discussions. Everyone was much happier. And I have, I think, a couple of minutes I could try to describe to you why the latkes are so much better than the hamentaschen. So here's the problem with hamentaschen. All right. So with the hamentaschen, you can have a lot of grains of sugar that are right along the edge of the hamentaschen. And so if you slightly move this random point where Uncle Jeffrey puts down the first grain of sugar, this entire row will fall off of the side there. So depending a little bit on exactly how Jeffrey does it, you could lose 10 to the 100 grains of sugar very easily. And that's why this happens. Whereas it's not possible to have a lot of grains of sugar exactly along the edge of the latke. And there's a nice geometrical argument that I think I won't have time to do. Anyway, so this last forum, we decided that we would have latke instead of hamentaschen. So everybody was arguing, and then we started dinner, and we brought out the latke, and Aunt Matilda fanatically counted the number of grains of salt, and it was okay. And Uncle Jeffrey explained it to Cousin Minnie, and she said, "That's interesting." And she stopped pulling her little sister's hair. And she said, "I would like to go to MIT and study the Gauss-Latke problem." Thank you.
So let's hear it for both teams. We're going to give them a little bit of time to go and come up with rebuttals, if they can have little discussions in their groups. Each team will have 90 seconds to have one of their team members give a rebuttal to the other team. And while we're doing that, we have a word from our sponsors. Do you guys want to start? Yeah, there we go. That's coming down. Of course, I have to get the computer back on. Or not. There we go. Maybe. Or not. Okay, just as a preliminary, while they're thinking here, oh, now we have a problem. Where's Marissa? Marissa's not here. Okay, so we won't be having that. Let's have a preliminary just yell out, getting your voices and your vocal cords going. Let's hear latke screams. I want to hear you scream for the latke. And now, let's hear it back for the hamentaschen. Oh. The joke on that one was on me. Okay. Oh, come on. I cannot use one of these things. Okay. How many of you have not heard about birthright? Raise your hand. You're the people Shoshana most wants to see. Birthright. Registration open today. If you haven't yet been to Israel, or you have actually in most cases, and you're between the ages of 18 and 26, you can go. IsraelWithIsraelis.com. Let's hear it for free trips to Israel. Do I have the date right for Purimites? Yeah. Okay. Purim is the next holiday coming. Let's hear it for Purim. On March 8th, 8 to 11 p.m., Johnson Rink in the Z Center. Woo! Free ice skating, free ice skates, come in costume. Are there, you know, different types of prizes for different types of costumes?
To be announced. To
be announced. There will be food because it's a Jewish holiday and it's a Jewish celebration and we can't do it without food. And talking about food, we do Shabbat dinner every Friday night. Let's hear it for Shabbat dinner. W11, if you can't find it, whereis.mit.edu, best website ever. No signups necessary, just come every Friday night, 7 p.m. And you want more conversation, you want more fun? Come on, Jewish fun. It's Hamish, it's funny and it's serious and it's meaningful and it's funny and it's content filled. Our type of humor is something that requires a little bit of knowledge. And the form of tonight would be the same whether we were, you know, talking about technology neutrality versus technological ethics, the Israel-Palestinian debate, pro-life versus pro-choice, anything you want to debate, Judaism has something to say about it and probably has something to laugh about it as well. However you want to grow, come check us out at Hillel. Send an email to hillel@mit.edu and we will make it happen with you, for you, and we'll eat afterwards then too. One last call for hamentaschen hamen. Let's go hamentaschen and latke. Let's call it here. You guys yell out and then we'll get our debaters back up. Let's hear it for latke. Let's hear it for the Hamentaschen. You guys gave first arguments for the night?
Yeah.
You guys are first on rebuttal.
Okay.
All right. So, we have a few points to make in response to our colleagues' arguments, and we hope that you will find our rebuttal inspirational. So first I will take the words of the first speaker, who said, I usually only eat them when it's really necessary. And I was trying to think if maybe she was on the Latke team and kind of wandered over there by mistake. But so that to me seemed to be a good way to sum up. The argument that there were more Google searches for hamentaschen, and therefore that is an advantage for hamentaschen. Well, nobody knows what a hamentaschen is, so no wonder they're searching for it. And the argument then, there's more, somehow the procrastination in teams, that latkes teams were procrastinating and hamentashen teams decreased procrastination. And now this is what we call fishing, or cherry picking the dependent variable. If you looked at all the data, the reanalysis reveals that in fact, project grades were 7 points higher on average with latkes than hamentashen. That was not procrastination, that was deep thought and innovation and creativity. And finally, I will wrap up that you saw the picture of the entire universe, that you scanned through the entire universe. You saw billions and billions of stars. How many hamentashens could you find? One. All the rest of it was those amorphous blobs.
Those were rousing and spirited words, but we on our team feel it's important to take a more scientific and quantitative and geometric approach to these matters. We heard from Ethan, for example, that there were 30 million metric tons of potato produced last year. But it's important to speak not only the truth, and nothing but the truth, but also the whole truth. So we did some research and Googled up here, as you might have seen, how many tons of wheat were produced last year. And there were 674.9 million tons of wheat, so more than twice as much hamentash material as latke material. So numbers are important. Now, John, you made a nice geometric argument, and you attacked the triangle as being a bad shape for various reasons. But why have one hamentash when you can have two? Isn't this a nice shape? And finally, Larry, I have great respect for your work as a mathematician, but as a physicist, it's important to not only make calculations, but also put error bars on them and look at potential systematic errors. So when you made this measurement and you found that the difference here between the number of salt grains in one case and the other was 10 to the power 99, you have to contemplate that there are only 10 to the power 78 atoms in our universe. So, thank you.
So now comes the most important part of the evening. We have to determine which of these two foods is most superior. So we're going to do this, it seems about once every, on average, 3 to 4 years, I seem to be asked to moderate this debate. It worked very well for me 3 years ago when I did this. I'm going to have everyone put their heads down and cover their eyes, because this has to be a secret ballot. This is the United States, after all. Everybody put their heads down, cover their eyes. Okay. Now we're going to have, first we're going to go and vote for the hamentaschen, then we're going to vote for the latke.
Remember, we can see you.
Now, if you think that the hamentaschen did a better job of making an argument this evening, yell as loud as you can. Let's hear it for the hamentaschen. And if you thought the latke did a fabulous job this evening, let's hear it for the latke. And as always, I think I have to declare it a tie, because otherwise we couldn't do next year as well. Let's have another round for all of our professors and our graduate students. We have latkes and we have hamentaschen out in the hallway for those who want to, you know, eat their way through to the best. Anyone who wants a t-shirt, come on down here. We'll give you a t-shirt as long as you're in a picture. Thank you. Have a great evening.